moment. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, teachers, students, school leaders. Welcome to this webinar on learning to code with artificial intelligence. My name is Heidi Siwat, and I am the teacher coach for this challenge. And I am so excited that you're able to join us today on what I'm sure is going to be a very fascinating topic. We're going to start our morning with, the land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are something we hear regularly in our schools and even at different events. And we want to make sure that the land acknowledgements aren't just a thing we do, but that we take time to honor the message. So let's take a moment to ground ourselves to the land. Maybe put your feet on the floor, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you wish. Do what feels comfortable for you. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on distinct and diverse traditional territories of the First Nations and Métis where we live. And I think we are on lands that are governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. The idea is that we can all live peacefully together in sharing this one dish, this land, and all that it provides, so long as we each are mindful of only taking what we need. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. And I think we believe that the land acknowledgement is a moment for learning. So I would like to share something with you that I learned as I was developing the Artificial Intelligence Challenge Kit. This is Michael Running Wolf, and he grew up in a very small rural Montana village where there was unreliable water, unreliable electricity, no telephone, no connectivity. And he says, so naturally, I ended up doing my PhD in computer science at McGill University. And he actually is one of the very first engineers on the engineering team that developed Amazon's Alexa. Some of you may have that at home for interacting with. But Michael Running Wolf grew up listening to his mother and his grandmother speak their native language, Cheyenne, but it was very rare for people to still know that language. And there are only about 500 speakers in total today. And he was concerned that his native language was going to disappear unless he did something about it. So as a person who is an expert in AI, he actually developed something called AI in a box. And it's a way for people in his community to reinvigorate the language, learn the language, learn to speak the language, even though they might not have access to a real person who speaks the language or a teacher. So he's using artificial intelligence to solve a problem that matters to him. And if we think about the coding topic today, maybe think about a problem you might want to solve one day and how you might use coding for that. I'm just going to speak briefly about why I think this topic is important. AI is changing the world. It's changing school and learning. And in this challenge, we're curious, how can AI actually be used to help us with our learning? And since generative AI is a tool that we can interact with and have a conversation with, can we actually have a conversation where it is teaching us how to learn something? Coding is something everyone in Ontario has to learn in school, and and artificial intelligence is the key theme of our challenge. So we thought this would be an interesting topic for us to delve into. With that, I would like to introduce our guest, Jeremy Brooks. Jeremy, you can turn on your camera. Thank you. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hello,
Jeremy
everyone.
is
How are you?
is a professor at Humber Polytechnic, formerly Humber College. He's been an educator for over 20 years, specializing in network administration and network security and cloud enterprise, things that I know nothing about. But he loves engaging students in projects and in deep learning experiences, and he himself has started to use AI, generative AI, in his teaching and learning with students. So we invited him to come in today and share some information, but also do some live demos to show us what's possible in maybe teaching ourselves how to learn with AI. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Jeremy's going to take over the screen. And Jeremy, enjoy your time with our students.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's get ourselves live and ready to go. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for having me today. It's truly a privilege to be able to discuss with you and explore with you how we can use AI in learning. We're going to be focusing on learning code in particular, but the skills you'll be learning in this presentation are transferable to other topics. AI is very dynamic. It behaves as if it were a person, and it's moody, but it will listen to you and it will follow prompts and conversations with you. And that's what we'll look at first, okay? So let's just get going with our slide deck and we'll work our way through it together. So learning to code with AI is as much about learning how to learn with AI as it is about coding. And that's the message I'd like you to take home after this hour has gone by. Okay, so in a way, you're learning how to learn. And that is a talent that you have to work with all your life. So the objective will be to learn about ways to use AI to learn to code. And if all goes well, we'll have some idea about these topics. We'll learn how to talk with AI, really have a conversation with it. Once we've done that, we'll consider how AI may help us in developing a learning path so that we can remain focused. Beyond that, once we have an idea of what we are doing, we may want to find some advice. And mentorship is very important in learning at all stages of your learning journey. So we'll find ways to encourage AI to help us with that. Feedback and practice is essential. You will not learn unless you practice and solicit feedback and opinion on your work. AI can also be used for that purpose. So we'll try that out. And then finally, having done these many things, we'll actually go and give it a try. Okay, we'll do some coding. We'll become friends with AI. We'll talk with it and try and make these things happen. So let's just focus on the first item. Learning to write precise prompts is essential when working with AI. It allows us to be clear about our thoughts, and that is essential. We must find a way to express ourselves so that AI can understand what we are doing. Okay, so AI is essentially a person you haven't met yet. That's how you may want to think about it. A new friend, someone who just joined your school or moved in across the street in a house, and you want to get to know them. Okay, so every person, including AI in a sense, has a personality, and these are some personality traits of AI. AI is essentially a computer program. We call it a computer model, and it's been designed to create text that resembles the writing of a person. And that can be extremely attractive to all of us because it's writing in response to our thoughts and our ideas. So it's friendly that way. What AI does in a conversation is it receives input from you, not as speech, unfortunately. That'll happen eventually, but for now it's written. And it analyzes the sentences you write in AI. And its software uses a special program to select words from its own database of words of language. And it selects them in response to the context and the content of your sentence. So in AI, you always come first, and you must never forget that. Every conversation and every direction and next step in the conversation is led by you. You are the lead, and AI is the follower. But it's a follower that pays attention, and that's a nice thing about AI. AI does like to interact, and luckily, it's been designed to work better in a natural conversational style. As long as you're clear with your thoughts, you don't have to sound brilliant. You don't have to have flowery words. You can talk the way you talk with your friends. And AI prefers that because it then can build a reply to you that's tailored to the way you like to speak. And you can learn more that way from the conversation. So other characteristics of AI then you should be aware of, as I mentioned earlier, is that it is a follower. So you initiate the conversation, and key to that is you can also direct the conversation. This is a skill that you will develop as you go through your schooling and take on adult life. Knowing how to direct a conversation makes you an efficient communicator and an efficient learner at the same time. So keep that in mind, that we can always trigger AI to think in a different direction. It means then, conversely, that you have to listen to AI. Now, AI doesn't speak back. I mentioned this minutes ago. AI does not use spoken voice, neither from yourself or in return to you. I think it will be coming sometime very soon. For now, the listening really means reading. So when AI provides you with a reply, you have to read it carefully to see that it is replying with content that supports your question, right? AI sometimes may choose the wrong words. After all, it just uses a piece of software to predict what it thinks you want to hear or read about. And sometimes the predictions are wrong. So you have to read carefully, and you may have to redirect AI, ask it to clarify if it's not answering and meeting your expectations. You also need to be good at writing prompts that way then. So AI will only provide a reply, right, that's useful to you if your prompts are well thought out. And we'll practice that in our presentation today, hands-on. We'll make up some prompts. We'll make some that are deliberately good and others that are a little less good, okay? And you'll see how AI, it'll get confused a little bit and respond to you in different ways. Once you know how AI is as a with its personality and how it behaves, you can start leveraging AI to become useful to you. And one of the most useful things about AI is that it allows you to create a learning path. So in our context, we want to learn about coding. Some of you may have done some coding already. Others may not have even thought you'd ever want to touch a keyboard for coding. Doesn't matter what your interests are. If you're curious, you can develop an interest. So in this segment, we're talking about then asking AI the right questions so that it can then reply with recommendations, telling you, in other words, what a lesson plan might look like. It may actually choose content of the lesson plan based on your expressed interest in particular things, okay? We have an example of it here coming up. You could type this into AI and it would likely develop a simple lesson plan. Can you suggest some beginner Python projects for someone interested in computer games? Now, I might be using words that you don't understand, most likely the word Python. Python is a programming language, one of many. And so there is a bit of preparation here. You have to think, again, when you're writing a good prompt, you have to think ahead, right? And put into the prompts content that you know you can benefit from. So this learner has already noticed or heard that Python is an interesting programming language, and it might be useful for their journey. So they thought they would ask ChatGPT to suggest some beginner projects for someone interested in computer games. So this is a nice, simple, straightforward prompt, and it's a good starting point, okay? But we can do more than that, okay? It's all about context, and that's meaning context means it's all about details on how much information you put into your question, okay? And this is where you can manipulate the direction. Most of us, when we're in conversation, listen carefully to our partners in the conversation, and we tend to respond with content that supports and encourages further conversation, right? And that's what we're doing here, basically, okay? So in this previous conversation, we basically asked a very simple question. Can you suggest some beginner Python projects for someone interested in computer games? Or we could add to that sentence and make it a little bit more detailed so that ChatGPT can help us better, okay? So this is the improvement, you might say. So we're saying that now that I'm a beginner interested in learning Python, that's not new. However, we continue. I want to create some simple games, and I have completed grade 9. That's new information. Can you suggest 5 starter projects that would be good for practicing arrays, loops, and visualization? So here now we're beginning to throw language out and use language that is sounding more detailed about what we're hoping to be told. And finally, any learning plan should have a pathway that follows a schedule. So we're informing Python at the same, or not Python, ChatGPT, that we have 8 weeks available to learn to code. This is lots of information, and it takes some time to put it in, right? You would actually spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes about these objectives, right? What purpose and how much time you have, and even some concepts in programming, such as arrays, loops, and visualizations. They may not mean much to you right now, but you could have chosen them just because you heard that they're part of what goes into a piece of code. And this then would allow ChatGPT to give you a nice reply. We'll try this. We'll try this later on today and see what it can do for us. The next point I'd like to make you aware of is that Python can also be a mentor to you. A mentor is somebody who shows interest in you and gives you advice and direction, right? And also encouragement. So, learning code is not easy. Code doesn't follow the structures of human thinking, unlike Python. Python does. It's designed to think and express itself like you and I. But code is very different from that. It follows more structured patterns that support concepts of logic, you might say, mathematics and concepts like that. So very often you'll find you cannot understand some of the language and structure in Python or any code because it can appear complex at first. Luckily for us, AI can help us out with this and explain to you sections of code and concepts in code. And in that way, it can become a personal tutor. Quite literally, as you go along, you always have a mentor at your side. And the idea then, and the skill in your side, is to write your prompts in such a way that AI notices that it can act as a mentor to you, and it will choose wording that's supportive with what you want to do. Here's an example. You could use language like this. Teach me the basics of, and you might say, supposing you want to learn how to boil an egg, teach me the basics of boiling an egg, breaking it down into easy to follow steps. And quite literally, Python will come back and tell you, well, you need a pot and you might need a liter of water, and you have to decide how many eggs you want to boil, right? That kind of thing. And it quite literally will help you understand the steps that you need to do to do something as simple as that. The key in these examples is the choice of language. We can put any subject or topic into these sentences, and we're triggering mentorship in ChatGPT as we are interacting. So in this second example, what are the essential skills I should develop to become a proficient means expert, okay, to become an expert in a career or a field. So this has got nothing to do with coding, but this is a great little example, right? How you might get the advice of ChatGPT from AI or ChatGPT in my example, on how to pursue interests, hobbies or readings or other forms of activity that help you focus on developing abilities in perhaps a skill, maybe being a better tennis player or being, a leader on a sports team. Supposing you play something like soccer or you like, cycling, you could ask it, how can I become a more proficient team member on a soccer team, for example? And it would give you some good advice. So that's another nice way of expression for it. Finally, provide a daily practice routine to improve my skills. Now, this one is loaded with meaning because of the inclusion of daily practice routine. So in this case, you can expect your mentor to suggest to you perhaps a 5-day cycle, a 5-day repetition of lessons. or something longer than that. We could have improved this by saying, but we do say daily here, so it actually knows it's looking for a daily routine. But it might decide to tell you, well, let's make up a 7-day routine, right? And you specify the area. A daily routine on tidying my bedroom, perhaps, and that would be a good one, wouldn't it? If you're having trouble with that skill. But in our case, we'll be using prompts similar to this to get ChatGPT to help us. So mentors are useful because they personalize their attention to you. You feel, and that's what a mentor does, right? A mentor is like an uncle who visits only twice a year, but every time they're with you, you feel that you're learning from them, right? And that they're encouraging you with your interests as you tell them what you've done in the past year, right? That personalization is very motivating, and that's what you can trigger when you work with AI this way. And consequently, your confidence starts growing because you're finding someone is recognizing or contributing to your efforts and making you into the person you wish to be, right, through your learning journey. Python is fantastic as a mentor because if you give it the right signals, it can adjust your learning pace. This actually is really, really a beautiful idea. Very often Python, I found when I'm developing lessons and working with my students, Python can race away with concepts really fast. And that'll happen to us today too, I'm willing to predict. And what you'll have to do on occasion is say, wait a minute now, I'm completely lost with this last blankety blank, suggestion of yours. And Python says, oh, that's fine. Let's just stop for a second and we'll go back to the basics, right? And that's what a mentor does, right? A mentor is always optimistic and will encourage you to move ahead. Finally, you also need to be aware, or like what you will learn rather, is that Python is great at reducing consequently your anxiety and your stress. The learning process is difficult, it's challenging, right? And it can make us feel that we cannot proceed and perhaps might want to give up, right? And having a mentor that has this ability to be flexible and to increase your confidence and show personal attention to you will take away the stress of the learning process, especially useful in something as difficult as learning to code. Another benefit of ChatGPT or any form of AI is obtaining practice and feedback. You can always find ways to do things differently and do things better. And if you follow the schedule, for example, if we had asked AI or ChatGPT to give us a daily routine or an 8-week plan, that kind of consistency and application over time gives you a chance to reflect on your learning. And you might be, made aware or inspired to change a piece of code you've come up with, or change the way you play on a team. And AI can give you feedback on that. So in the context of coding, what you can do is, if you have written a piece of code that's maybe 30 lines long, and you're reading over it a week or two later, you realize, I think that might be a better way to say what I want to do in my code. You could simply extract those lines of code, put them into ChatGPT in this case, and ask it, what's your opinion on this, right? Ask it to evaluate it and to give you some suggested improvements. So here's a good example of the kind of language you would use to make that happen. It's the same person from the previous slides, you might say, who's still working with Python. Here is some Python code I wrote for a random number game. So we know that this person wants to learn how to make simple games, and they're working on it. A random number game that unfortunately is not working. Can you please review this code and explain what is wrong? Provide suggestions for how to proceed. So this is a great little solicitation, or you are inviting, in other words, feedback from ChatGPT, and it'll come up with a strategy and a plan. It will actually read the code that you feed into it. It will assess it for errors and proper syntax and efficiency, and it will come back likely with some ideas of where your mistakes are and what you need to do to improve them. And one wonderful thing about AI is that it never gets tired of being asked. Okay, you don't have to worry about taking time away from someone when you're doing this. You don't have to worry about whether they're available. It's always there for you. And repetition is not a problem. In fact, AI notices repetition, or you being stuck, let's say, and asking similar questions over and over again, and it will never tire of finding ways to help you pass that hurdle, right? And that is absolutely fantastic. So having explored AI that way, and how it behaves and how you can encourage its conduct, let's just jump in a little bit into coding with AI, okay? You may not be able to follow along, but today I realize that, but you can always review these slides later on. And what you'll need to do when you are ready in the future, you need access to a computer. It doesn't have to be a computer you own. It could be a computer in a public library or in your school, or a shared computer, in other forms. But you need access to a computer of sorts. Unfortunately, it doesn't run very well on phones, but it does run well on tablets that have fully running operating systems other than a phone. So a tablet that runs Apple products or Linux products will be fine, or Windows. You need Python, of course, which is a form of language. And you need something called an editor. An editor is essentially a sheet of paper, you might say. It's like saying you need a notepad to write things into. So we need those three items to do our exploration, okay? Having done that, then let's just get ready for that. I'll take a minute to get my information on the screen for you, and we'll give it a try, okay? So let's go and get our web browser visible. And another thing we'll put on screen is this little thing here. This is our notepad, quite literally, and in fact, it looks like a notepad. It's got areas we can write information into. So first of all, let me again point out to you what you need if you want to do this at a later point. You need to have access to some form of AI, and there's a half dozen available for you. I'm using ChatGPT. I find it, I'm familiar with it basically, and much like I told you earlier, introducing oneself to the AI and knowing how it behaves and its conduct. It may vary a little bit from AI to AI. I'm familiar with ChatGPT, so I thought I'd work with that today. That's the first thing you need. The next thing you need is this middle tab. You need to download or install Python on your computer. Python is an open source language, or open source means shared and designed by a community and not owned by anyone in particular. It's a collaboration, quite literally. And the best place to download it is from the location where the community stores their Python software. So you'd have to go to python.org and download it, okay? This will take time, so if you're following along anyway, maybe you're lucky to do that right now. This may take some time away from you. It's best letting it sit, I think, for now. And the third thing you need is what we call an IDE, okay? An IDE is an interactive desktop experience, meaning it's a notepad, a digital notepad that's interactive. It allows you to write information into it, and it responds and gives you output or results, you might say. So an IDE is essentially a form of a simulator, okay? So those three things are what you need. Let's go back then and see if we can get started with our project. So the first thing we'll do is work through an introduction to Python. Let's first of all become acquainted, in other words, okay? And what I'm going to do quickly is I like to have an account in ChatGPT so I can remember my conversations. So I'll do that really quickly. And here we go. You don't need an account, okay? I got to stress that. You're really just you can use ChatGPT as it is. So here we are in ChatGPT. We have installed Python ahead of time, and we have our notebook on the right-hand side. So this thing here essentially is our notebook. And you can put information or code in here, and it then will give you the output in the screen below. That's what this IDE does. And of course, here in ChatGPT, we'll enter our queries, as we call them, and ChatGPT will respond with similar information. So for instance, in here, then we could introduce ourselves. We could say, hi, I am interested in learning how to code, all right? Perhaps that kind of thing. Let me try and get that in there. Nice thing about ChatGPT is that if you are not so good at typing, which I am, it can interpret your language anyway. So here we are. We may have some spelling mistakes in it, but it'll come back now right away with a conversation. The answer you're seeing here is entirely generated based on essentially guesswork, right? It reads the input I gave to it, and then using analytics, it decides on a response to us. Now, the question I gave is deliberately simple. If you notice, it doesn't follow my advice that I just gave to you, right? Because the context is very narrow. And simply saying I'm interested how to code. I'm not telling it anything else about what I want to learn or do with coding. Doesn't say anything about my skill set in coding. Doesn't say anything about my timeline, right? And how many hours I want to spend learning how to code. So the answer consequently is a little less useful to us, right? So we can improve on this a little bit and give it some more information. You could say, for instance, like we did before, you could say that you are I'm just going to pretend I'm in grade 8. I'd love to be there again. Okay. And we could say, I want to code video games, right? Or code simple games, let's say. So go into that. I want to code, probably see my own lines here. Code simple games. Okay. And you will see now then it gets a little bit more helpful to us with its response. So here we are. And it even suggests to you that there are some libraries or online tools where you can learn how to code, a Pygame. I've never seen it before. But of course, if you are a student, you would simply click on that then and go and see some more about it. Okay, a good way to start by making a text-based game then, like guessing games or choose your own adventure stories, before moving to more visual games. Would you like to try a text-based game first, or ready to dive into something with graphics? So this is, again, Python becoming super helpful. Now, let's make this then more useful. We might say, I want to learn Python, so it understands a little bit more about us. And text games are just fine. We're replying to its suggestion, okay? Because video games are a little bit more difficult to code, so we'll go with that. Text games, I have never coded before, we'll say, so that it understands our skill set. See what it says. And here we go. So it's jumping right into its first suggested game for us. So it's beginning to build a plan, right? And giving us some ideas. So it tells us what the game will do, the outline. It's a computer game that will pick a random number. The player has to guess the number, and the game will tell the player if the guess is too high or too low, or if it's correct. Now you can see here, it's beginning to give us code, suggested code, that's already prepared for us. In other words, it's gone ahead, it's raced ahead a little bit. Okay, I was telling you how we have to learn how to direct the conversation. It's jumping right away into coding games as if you had done so before. And this is where we have to know then how to tell Python, wait a minute now, we're moving too fast, okay? So you can give it signals like that and say, for example, that looks difficult, right? And Python then knows to slow down. That looks difficult. We'll ask it for, give me a simple lesson. And let's see if it comes back with an answer for us then. No problem. Let's start with the basics and build it gradually, okay? Printing text and variables, fantastic. So it's actually thinking like you would like it to. I mentioned the word lesson, right? In our, I didn't spell it right, but I asked it for a lesson and it's coming back with a reply. Python is paying attention, in other words, like I said, it does. And it's responding in ways that are helpful to us, okay? And printing text is really about as foundational as you can get with a lesson, okay? So we could then try doing this ourselves. And the way it works then is this is sample text that we can try and use. And what we should do is type it in here into the input area of this little tool called Tawny, okay? So let's just give that a whirl and see how that looks. Oops, I made my whiteboard by mistake. Sorry about that, sports fans. Here we go. So we're going to pick up that information and type it in. So we could go like this. Now, keyboarding is everything in learning code. You're learning two skills, of course. You're learning how to communicate effectively through this device called the keyboard, right? Without spelling mistakes, in other words, and in good speed. But at the same time, you're also memorizing coding characters or syntax, as we call it. So in this line, we're telling it to do something, printing, and some language is there. Hello world. It looks like a message of sorts, doesn't it? So it tells us that it will in fact do that. It prints or displays hello world. Now in Tawny, let me give you a little orientation in that. So you enter your code or your instructions in this window here, and the output will show down here. Now here you see this output is full of, or this lower section has lots of code in it. And that's because I was playing around with it earlier today. And this is code from a previous exercise. So this output will disappear because it's essentially no longer needed. The way you use Tawny, supposing you're completely lost, let me do this for you actually. Let's pretend then that we don't know how to use Tawny. In fact, we don't, okay? And we can tell it that. We can say, I have Tawny, but don't know how to use it. And ChatGPT, there we go. ChatGPT will say, okay, no worries. Let's take a moment to do that. So it does tell you, it thinks it's a nice piece of software, and it is. It's a good choice for beginners. That's why I suggest it for you, save you some time there, perhaps. But to get started then, you open Tawny, and the way you, Tawny is a piece of software on your desktop, okay? So it looks like this. There it is right here. Once you've installed it, you simply open it up. There it is back again, okay? And it tells you then, you can click on the editor area, and this much is not quite clear about, but the editor area is the top half, and the output area is down below. And they're basically two windows you can slide around. You can move them up and down, like so. Whoops, where is that? Here we go. You can move the windows up and down depending on whether you want to have more code space or more output space, okay? But we basically enter the code, and then it tells us to click on the run button, which I've shown you. It's this green button up here, and then Tawny then will execute the code, and the execution then shows down below, hello world. So that's how you do this, and you can run it as many times as you like. You can repeat this piece of software, hit the button as many times, and it will cycle through the instructions. Your work can be saved. It's telling us about that. There's a save tool here, and you can save it in any of your locations on your computer that you wish. What you want to do, of course, is make a folder, call it Python lessons, and save your work in there, right? So let's do that. New folder, and we'll call it, the folder name will be, oh yeah, she's right here. Let me just rename it then really quickly. We'll go into this, rename it. It lets me. Got some information here. It found it for me. So I'll open up my folder and we'll just call it lesson 1. There we go. And this way, then you're building a library of lessons that you have done. So we've got it done. We finally have Tawny under control, and we've created some inputs. If you want to get more elaborate, it's giving you then trying other user input, and you can type in more of it. You type in name and you can change your content, right? Now, let me show you something rather useful. You can copy your code if you don't want to do all the keyboarding all the time, which I don't recommend. You should do your keyboarding. You shouldn't just copy it. But we can then copy code into here, right? And I can place it, in fact, beneath the next line. So if I select, put my cursor where I'm pointing, hit enter, begins another line. And I can quite literally just paste this information into here. So now it has 2 lines of code to do. It's going to print hello world, and then it will do this next piece of information here, which seems completely strange to us. I understand that. We'll explore it later, perhaps. But we can just hit play, and it does these 2 things, and it prints hello world, and it then prints something that says hello blankety blank with an expression mark. And what it would print is your name, right? If you were to provide the input for it. So it's asking for it. What is your name? I'll say Jeremy, I'll explain his code in a second. I realize it's doing something to me here. And it then replies, hello, Jeremy. Let's carry on with the idea as I showed you earlier on. When you're learning to code with AI, you can see here, AI is running ahead of us all the time, right? And we're kind of getting lost. So what we could do here is ask it some questions. For instance, we might ask it this. This is a line that seems rather strange, right? We could say this then to ChatGPT and tell it, what does this mean? Like so. Enter, and ChatGPT will come back with an explanation, right? And this is, again, the mentorship role of ChatGPT, right? As you converse, ChatGPT understands more and more about your skill sets, and it takes time to redirect you should you need it. So a great question. Let's break this down, and it tells us then what it does. Input, what is your name? The input portion of this instruction, right, displays a message to the user. In this case, what is your name? And then waits for some form of response from you. So it's going to tell you ask you what is your name, and it will wait and wait and wait until it gets the answer. That's what happens here. Let's just demonstrate that again. If I hit the play button, it runs, first of all, it prints hello world because we're asking it to, right? And then it says, what is your name? And it's simply waiting here and sitting until you enter a name. Maybe you change your name to Mike, and then you'll hit enter. And that's what it says here. Whatever you type in will be captured by the program, and it will then print it out as a response. Hello, Mike. So this kind of exploration is where knowing how to use AI is practical to you. You can find yourself becoming better and better at your own pace. If you notice, I had no idea what was going to happen with this demonstration. I had no idea where the next step would have been in the learning. But by asking ChatGPT and giving it prompts to redirect the conversation the way you want, it can be extremely helpful to you in your pathway. Okay. So that's sort of an introduction to how you can interact. Other questions you may ask yourself when looking at this code, even on here on this right-hand side, you can see the words have different colors. We've got, looks like purple and green, coloring in the words. And if you're new to coding, you might ask yourself, what does that mean? So we can actually ask it that. This is even more foundational. You might say, why are there colors in these words, right? Colors in the code, we'll say. And this is another lesson, basically, right? So Python, ChatGPT then comes back again, and it tells you what we're doing with it. The colors in Tony's editor are there to help you read and understand code more easily. This is called syntax highlighting. That's a fancy phrase, isn't it? Syntax means essentially writing. It's the highlighting of the writing. And each color represents a different part of code, making it easier to spot and understand the elements, right? Here's what some of these colors mean. So there's something called a string, right? Such as the word hello world. It's a green color, basically. The green colors are strings, and they often are shown in green, and the strings are text that appears inside quotes. The quotes are here. We can see them, these rounded quotes over here. Keywords are also available, such as print, input, and they typically are used to execute what we call functions. A function is like a little program inside a program. Okay, so we have a program called print to display things. We have a program called input to receive things. Okay, so that's how that works. Now let me show you how you can do cool things with Python. Okay, we'll do some cutting and pasting. Now you've seen a bit of a learning process. I'll show you some ways we can use Python to do things that are kind of fun and dramatic. Okay, so there's a little program I put together here, and I'll do quite literally an exploration side. Now this is what's fun about learning, right? We can go ahead and try something different, quite literally. So we'll make a new board. And what I'm doing is I have some code in a different screen below, and I'm just going to paste it quite literally into Tawny over here, right? And the code that I'm pasting is easy to find. When you start exploring Python, it'll give you lots of suggestions and so on and so forth. And this basically is a piece of code I have found and used to demonstrate a simple graphic tool. So if I make it run or hit play, I have to bring it up onto the screen for you to see it, because it actually drops it in my second screen. But here it is. So this code you see on the right-hand side creates essentially a graphic that looks like this when it runs. It simply makes a little spiral, you might say, of squares. And it's done using this code here. Now, you as a learner might say, oh, I'd love to learn more about that, right? And you could then quite literally start using your inquiry, right? As you're working your way through your school year and your lessons, you're likely asked by your instructor to come up with questions or inquire, into the subject or the assignment, and those same habits are useful to you here in learning how to use Python. So, for instance, we may not know what import turtle does, for example, right? We could quite literally do this step by step. We could pick this up, go into ChatGPT, and ask it, what is import turtle? And it'll tell you in a few minutes, right? The import turtle, right, is used in Python to bring the turtle graphics library, basically another function, you might say, in a fun way to create drawings and simple graphics, right? So that's what it does first. It brings the package into memory. Then it starts working with screen, turtle screen, and so on and so forth. These green things are the text that we can modify. Let me show you another cool one out here that's kind of fun. I have a game here for you called, and you can try this out. You'll see how it's inspiring, I think. It's a game that allows you to build a wardrobe. Let me see if I can get this visible for you. 1 second, please. It is, there we go. It's what I call a virtual wardrobe planner, okay? So let's make another new notepad sheet, right? It's like turning the page in your notepad. We'll get into it now, and we'll have a quick look at it and see what it can do. It's kind of a fun little game. What it does is why can't I see it here? Let me try this one more time. 1 second, please. We get into here, and we'll open it. Here we go. Found it. Let me put this on the screen for you, like so. So this is a, that didn't quite work right either. Let me try one more time. I may have copied it too fast. So we'll do this, we'll put it in here. And this is a little game then that is used it's a game that we've created to randomly select a list of clothing that you can customize. So you're supposing shirts, skirts and socks is not enough. You can always add another item to the list if you wanted to. The accessories, hats, gloves, and belts, and some kinds of footwear, right? This is a game then, or a little piece of software that will choose at random one from each of these categories and suggest that is what you should be wearing today. It's kind of a fun thing to do. So if we hit the play button, it'll do just that. And it says this: today, I will wear jeans and gloves and matching sneakers, right? And it chooses them at random from each of these categories. So that this is actually the beginning of a typical game. Every time I run it, it gets a different sequence. This time it'll suggest that I wear t-shirts, hats, and matching sandals, and so on and so forth, right? Every time it runs, it does so differently. This is a structure for a game of chance, quite literally. We could replace the clothing or the accessories or the footwear with other chance-oriented things. For instance, if we had a deck of cards, we could have one line for each of the suites in the deck of cards. Diamonds, clubs, spades, and the other fourth one I forget. We can basically, use this for chance. For instance, if we had a dice game, this would be a game of 3 dice. We could have numbers 1 to 6 in each, right? And we could then toss 3 dice and have it select for us three numbers at random. So that's an example. Here's another example of a typical random game. This one is going to be a game that helps you choose teams that might be playing one another in a game or in a tournament. You might say, how are we going to choose these teams for this particular event? Okay, so this is a good little example of that. So again, it uses the random program or tool, right? And you're going to tell it to choose randomly from a list of teams. Here, this might be the European Cup or the World Cup in soccer, for example. And we're going to try and choose members or teams that could play one another from this list of 6. Okay, it would choose a random team twice, because we need obviously a soccer game has two teams playing in it, and it makes sure that the 2 teams are unique. So we hit the play button, it'll say this then. The match will be between Portugal and France, right? If I run it a second time, it chooses a different pair of teams, and so on and so forth. So this is just a little example for you then to see how it is that that you can use ChatGPT to guide you and give you direction in how your learning will go. And what I hope you take away from this is that the learning process with ChatGPT is best done if it's structured. Okay, in other words, you can follow ideas and guidelines to help you make better learning environment. Okay, so you'll learn how to talk with it. You will chart a learning path. You will recruit it as a mentor. You'll ask it questions all the time, and you'll practice, 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 and solicit feedback. I hope that's useful to you. It is just a very beginning, but I think with these prompts or these tips, you may find that working with AI is awfully fun. It gets you working really well. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to
Wonderful. Jeremy, I'm going to hop in here, and if I can ask you to stop sharing your screen, and I'm going to reshare mine. Oh my goodness, that was so fantastic.
Okay, let's do that. Let me find how to unshare my screen. In a second, we'll have that under control. Here we go. Stop sharing. Done.
All right, and now I'm going to share mine. That was so interesting.
Thank you.
Wow, Jeremy, I really had no idea how much I could interact with an AI in order to get it to coach me and get it to point me in the right direction and help me make plans. So I can see using this not just for coding, but for many other things. Like, how amazing is that? I really want to thank you today, Jeremy, for coming in and showing us. And for students, if you want to go back and do that, this webinar is actually recorded, so you could have access to it and you can work through this step by step. Or if you have questions for Jeremy that you want to ask, or maybe you even create something with coding and you want to show what you created, you can email me and I'll let Jeremy know, and I can share that with Jeremy. Have some conversations about what you learned today. What are the things you found interesting? What are some questions you might have? What's one thing from today that you think all students should know about when you're trying to learn how to code with AI? Or really, remember Jeremy said, you're learning how to learn with AI. But with that, I want to thank also Margarita in the background, who's been our wonderful tech support today. I want to thank your teachers for bringing you here today. Continue to enjoy this challenge and learn as much as you can. And I can't wait to see what you come up with in answer to our question, how might AI enrich the lives and possibilities of everyone in our school? And with that, I want to remind you, we have other sessions this week, AI safety, and somebody is going to show us how we can use AI to support our learning in other ways. That's coming up as well as some next week. But it is our end of our time together. So thank you so much, friends, for joining us today. I hope you take at least one interesting thing away and go on and enjoy the rest of your day, and reach out with questions, comments, or if you want to share something with me that you are doing in AI. Have a good day, everyone.
I'm back. I'm still here.
You're still there, and I think Margarita has stopped recording.
Well,